Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about fish. But not like the last time we talked about fish. No, we got double the fish. It's going to be double the fish, but double less the time. So, like, we're going to be speed running this because there's not going to be a whole lot more to say. But there were some interesting innovations that I saw somewhat recently when I was looking over TC decks, looking at all the pre-modern stuff. Always interesting stuff for better or worse. Sometimes you never know what's good until you try it. So, anyways, I found some interesting sort of variations on the merfolk theme, the fishy theme, and we're going to be talking about that today. And yeah, this should be pretty sweet. Okay, so we got twice as many fish. We got two different decks, two different deck lists that are slightly different in different ways, but attempt to patch up some of the issues or shortcomings of just the mono blue merfolk decks. We're heading into uncharted territory, right? So really cool stuff we're looking at today. And in a lot of ways, this is better than just the mono bluefish, just because you have a different angle of attack, more resiliency, more robust answers, so on and so forth. It's not exactly, we'll say, superior or strictly better, for lack of a better word, than um, the previous versions of fish. But that's okay. That's okay. This is, food for thought, so to speak. So it's really interesting stuff, and I am just going to steal these deck lists straight off of TC decks. That's right. I'm ripping you guys off. You're not getting any of this money I'm making from my videos, which is, I can assure you, a lot. I am bankrolled by some very powerful Arab sheiks, right? So, you're not going to see a dime of that money. Why? Because A, it's my money. B, you don't get it. So, you don't get my money and it's my money. So, those are the reasons. Anyways, really sweet decks. I thought the decks were interesting, so I just copy pasted them. I thought they were kind of neat, and I was like, well, I don't really know what else I would really change, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So, all right. Okay, first off, we have a sort of dreadnought plus merfolk stuff going on. Obviously, the cards you need for the dreadnought thing are basically Vision Charm and Stifle, as well as dreadnought itself. So it's pretty compact, or at least relatively speaking. And that's pretty sweet because Stifle is a card that already sometimes sees play in some numbers in these decks. So making space for the Dreadnoughts and the Vision Charms, that's not like a big ask, right? So that's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. Of course, Stifle obviously has other uses. You can say, for example, Stifle their triggers of Goblin Ringleader or their fetch lands or Pernicious Deed, things like that. You could stifle a scroll rack. Sometimes, that might be really important, really relevant. So yeah, there's definitely some uses for that. Even Vision Charm, you can phase out your Winter Orb, right? In response, and so that's pretty neat. Nice way to sort of avoid the removal on your Winter Orb. So that's cool. So the cards aren't totally dead outside of the combo, which is nice. Yeah, and so this is a nice thing. What the Dreadnought combo does is obviously it gives it like a pseudo sort of combo feel, of course, right? But also, like, the hate for Dreadnought is completely different than the hate for, like, Fishies, right? So you have to play something like Plow specifically, right, for Dreadnought because it's just so huge, or something like Disenchant, whereas these cards are just, like, fine or okay. Or even think about some of the powerful sideboard cards like Engineered Plague, or as well as something like Pyroclasm. Like, these cards are not good against Dreadnought, right? So, yeah, Pyroclasm doesn't do a heck of a lot to Phyrexian Dreadnought, if you can believe it. So, yeah. Um, so anyways, that's pretty obvious, pretty simple stuff. Nothing too weird here. Again, and the sideboard is just typical blue cards or artifacts you would see against pretty much in any typical metagame and in any blue sideboard. Um, Stuff like Merfolk Looter, Waterfront Bouncer, Root Water Diver, yeah, this kind of stuff. Not too wonky, pretty good stuff. Um, Also, I just want to say how much I love Waterfront Bouncer. That dude is huge. I want to look like that guy one day. Do you think he's natty? I can't tell. He probably is. That's totally natty. All right, and now we have, of course, the second version, which is basically a pseudo sort of grow deck, where basically has a more or less the same creature base as the some of the earlier versions of Miracle Grow. Obviously, it's a million times worse because we don't have any of the dual lands, Brainstorm or Force of Will, right? So obviously it's going to be quite a bit worse, but that's, fine, right? Like, I don't think that's like something that we we need to have or whatever, you know. Premodern isn't the real format unless you have fully powered tricks, right? And Miracle Grow, just battling it out all day long, right? Um, anyways, uh, again, nothing too weird here. So you have Queer and Dryad, which avoids, again, a lot of the anti-blue hate, right? So something like, say, Red Elemental Blast. It also, of course, can grow tall, so can put it out of the range of something like Pyroclasm pretty quickly, so that's nice. And as well as something like Guy's Skyfolk, which is just a much better creature than most of the other merfolk. Like, it already has evasion, it's 2 power, two, two, 2 mana, 2 power and toughness. So yeah, it's a flying grizzly bear, which is really kind of exactly what you want in these kind of decks. Cards that sort of stand on their own pretty well. And of course, it's also a merfolk to get pumped by Lord of Atlantis, and of course, Merfolk Looter, something also seen in the early variants of Grow. Again, just a very powerful card, sort of deceptively so. There's kind of took. I think it's sort of the power of something like Merfolk Looter. It's one of those cards that's like pretty dang strong, and we don't see it around. It just doesn't get printed anymore. Like, they printed this card all over the place in like 7th edition, 8th, 9th, and 10th, right? And then, or I think even up into M10. And it's like, it sort of maybe took a little bit longer for people to realize how sort of this subtle power, so how much effect it has on the game. So yeah, Merfolk Looter, definitely a great card here and constructed. Definitely has a pretty good history of being useful. It's another Merfolk to get pumped, just drawing you into hate and all sorts of other stuff. Definitely a great sort of skill testing card. Real good stuff there. Anyways, I like everything else is more or less fine, although I'd probably cut it with the annuls plus naturalize. I feel that's a little bit much. I mean, this is basically 7 naturalize effects in your sideboard, so I think that's a bit excessive. I mean, I'm okay with the split, but I don't think 7 is really needed. I'd probably go for something like compost, right? If we're looking for, trying to diversify our hate against certain things like black decks or whatever. Compost is really good against something like pox and things like that. It's very difficult for them to remove. So yeah, compost would be a great one. Maybe, oh gosh, maybe more crypts or something like that. But yeah, seven disenchant effects probably too much. They're a little much. So yeah, but other than that, looks good to me. Looks good to me. Who doesn't like casting Query and Dryad? That's a sweet card. All right. So right, like I mentioned, both these decks sort of do a thing of going wide as well as the ability to go tall, right? So that's pretty sweet. Again, makes them a little bit more resilient, right? And so that's pretty nice. Trying to look for other ways, additional ways to overcome the traditional weakness of like the mono blue sort of fish or merfolk deck or whatever. So that's great. But it does open up you to certain things like, again, mana inconsistency issues with like, or at least in the case of the blue green deck, right? You more vulnerable to something like Wasteland or whatnot. And of course, obviously for the Dreadnought version, like sometimes you draw like 1 or 2 Dreadnoughts and there's no Stifle in sight, and like these cards are obviously blanks, so that's obviously bad. So these lists aren't like, say, oh, they're just better in every way than the previous versions of the fish deck, but they are trying to sort of work around some of the weaknesses, which of course I detailed, right? I mean, obviously the creatures are extremely mopey, without like a lot of the really powerful disruption or digging cards or something like that, like you're just gonna be left with like these really mopey creatures and just gonna give your opponent a ton of time to come back into the game, which is clearly not really what we want to do. But um, that being said, still very interesting takes on this archetype. Definitely, I'm a big fan. Big fan. I like it. Pretty neat. Pretty cool. So yeah, good stuff there. So like some good and some bad. But yeah, there you go. So that's pretty much all I've got. Like I said, there's not much to say. Just these are just sort of minor changes and tweaks and stuff, but I thought they were interesting enough. And there was the couple different deck lists I saw, and I was like, well, let's highlight these, talk a little about it, get the word out, see what other people are thinking, because this is just cool stuff. A little bit more tuning, a little bit more evolution of archetypes, and trying to see where they fit in the metagame and all that great stuff, all that great stuff. So yeah, there you go. That's pretty much it. So thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. This is a super fast one, clocking it at 11 minutes. I am speed running deck techs now. I'm speed running deck techs now. My next one, I'm going to do 3 deck techs within 12 minutes. That's my plan. That's my plan. Anyways, thanks for stopping by, guys, and have a great day.